Let's get rocking and rolling. Our agenda for today goes kind of like this. We're going to talk a little bit of just philosophy around the dental implant consult, a little bit of the strategy, if you will, and we're going to dive more into that later, but we're going to start with just a little bit of philosophy. Then we're going to touch on a little bit of pre-consult ideas. Tom has some great insight of how we really prepare our patients for the consult and our staff. And then the big topic is the clinical consult. What do we actually do during that consultation visit? We're going to hopefully share a lot of pearls. No one has done this more than PK. And so I think having him here is going to make a big difference to hear, a lot of experience with that. And then we'll touch on some post-consult topics and then do a little Q&A. So real quick, this is one of my dad's favorite quotes. Nobody cares how much you know till they know how much you care. Dad, share some of your thoughts with us about that, how that relates to our patient engagement for consults.
The whole workflow with dental implants is different than as a general dentist. So a lot of times you'll go chairside, you'll diagnose, you need this, you need that, and then you just have a treatment plan coordinator that does that. I find it very hard to have a dental treatment plan coordinator that makes less money per year than the kind of treatment I'm suggesting. And so I've been doing it myself for many years. So number one, there's going to be a switch from your treatment planning with general dentistry to implant stuff that may or may not be covered by insurance and maybe a lot more involved. So first thing I would just say is don't get stuck in a trap. You're going to do the same thing you've always done with general dentistry, where you're not going to have a lot of success with this. And we'll comment more about that. I also would tell you in treatment planning in dental school, we were taught, let's plan an A treatment plan, a B treatment plan, and a C treatment plan. And when we only do 1, 2, or 3, it's likely if we're not really emotional and convicted about the treatment plan we're presenting to our patient. When I talk about clinical conviction, I'm talking about what you would do in a loved one. What you would do if that was your mother, your dad, your wife, your whatever. I think that's so important, and they will feel your clinical conviction. They will understand why you want them to have that so earnestly. I present not a 1, not a 2, or a 3. I have come to feel at the beginning, based upon their desires and their semi-budget that I can discern, I try to give them what I feel would be the very best. And then from there we go, where we have to. But if I say to the patient, and I know you guys aren't all doing this, but if I say that's $40,000 and they said, that's nuts, I can never do that. You say, okay, well, that's what it would require to do it perfectly, or to do it just as well as we can. So after thinking about it, let me know what you can spend. And I promise you, I will give you more money, more bang for the buck than anybody else. Do you follow how sincere that is? You're trying to give them something very important. And when you're talking full mouth reconstruction, no vertical dimension, no masticatory function, you've got this disaster in front of you. You have to let them know that what I do for you determines the distance from the end of your nose to the chin, which discerns your facial profile, and it dictates how old you are or how old you look. I'm dealing with a muscle that just floats around the teeth, doesn't have a muscle insertion or origin. I'm dealing with a joint that has got a ball joint on either end, operated by 4 muscle systems on either side of the face. These are things that they need to understand that you're trying to do for them, that their phonetics will be determined by what you do. Their aesthetics will be determined by you do, and you're trying to optimally reproduce functionality. Now, that is what I do. I do full mouth stuff. Let's boil it down to what you can do, and then you just keep working with it. But at the end of the day, I want you to pause and just say, you're right, that is a lot of money. But what I can do, if you will allow me, is tell me what your budget is, and I can help you. Now, Riley, I know, and Tom, that seems a little weird because we just do big cases. A lot of our doctors are doing onesies and twosies. I don't think it's that hard to treatment plan those, but I think you'll find great satisfaction if you listen close to some of these pearls that we've come up with.
I love that. And I think it's so important that you have that mindset. First off, the very first thing you've got to do with your implant patients is approach them like that family, like you're saying. We need to do for them what is the very, very best, and treat them with the empathy that they deserve. I think that really comes across. I think that's one thing that PK is really known for with his patients. I know because I treat them. They all love him because he cares about the patient, wants to do the best for them. It's not an economic game. It's more, how do I solve the right problem for this patient the right way based on their circumstances? So I think that's really, really key. Probably the first principle that we all need to understand.
And that quote, Riley, is everything. Nobody cares. They really don't give a rip about all the stuff we know. All they want to know is that you truly care about them. And that's exemplified by not wanting or having or compelled to seal the deal. If you come off feeling like you've got to seal the deal, you got to get them to say yes, good luck. Now, I would say today is a new day, and I'm going to show you all something that you don't expect to see in my hand. I don't know. Do you see that? Canada Dry. Who does that? It's normally Diet Coke. What's going on? This is bizarre.
The best ginger ale. Oh, it doesn't even show up on the, there it is.
There's our Diet Coke.
What is it?
It's a disappearing Diet Coke.
All right, let's get going. You got your caffeine. I've already had mine. I'm just having a little refresher for my voice. Carry on.
So let me show you this. I call this the 4 E's of a consult. And it's all centered around the patient. The patient, their unique circumstance has to be custom tailored to these 4 points. And I can't overemphasize that. I think we've hit on that. In order to get into the content, I'll leave it at that, but we really need to focus on the patient. But education, explanation, experience, and engagement. In my opinion, these are the 4 things I'm trying to focus on during my implant consultations. Let's start with education. For me, education is so much more important than I think we often give it value because we don't have time for it. We're busy. To hit these 4 points the right way, you need to schedule at least a 30-minute consult. Tom and I were talking at least 30 minutes, maybe an hour. Most of my consults are 1 hour, but the education part is important to help empower the patient to understand their options and make informed decisions. I can't tell you how many patients come into the office and say, oh my gosh, this is at the end of a consult, you offered like 3 or 4 potential treatment options. They only told me there's one option. It's called all on 4. I have to take out all my teeth. And so helping them understand there are options, there are advantages and disadvantages to any treatment option, I think is really important so they can make an informed decision. That's the education part. From
now,
there,
I would say the goal is 2. The goal is 2 things: educate and build relationships. And I take also, as you do, Riley, 1 hour, which is nuts. But that's what it requires. If this is a big, complicated case, sometimes it could require a lot longer time. But I give them an hour to begin with.
And I'd also add, I think what we're finding in our practices is you can make someone feel really comfortable with what you're educating them on, and they feel like they've got it, but they sometimes have to go home and educate another person about what's going on. And sometimes that's their spouse or whatnot. And so you got to have a pathway. Dad, I think you do this really good where you give them your cell phone number sometimes, right? If it's a larger case and they want to talk through it. But there's some things I'll talk about later about really preparing your team and your patient, and that you have systems in place to post-consult educate, because it will be needed in order to get the patient feeling, them and their support team feeling ready to do it.
Yeah.
Experience is probably my favorite one, and that's letting the patient experience you in your office, your style, your methodology, your attitude, your chairside touch and bedside manner. I think that is really, really important. At the end of the day, a lot of these patients make a decision based on the kind of the unseen, the feel, the vibe, what was the sense? Do I trust that person? I think the experience is really, really important. And then engagement is really helpful. You have to let patients be engaged. You need to welcome questions, question after question after question. If they sense you're in a hurry and you don't have time to answer their questions, they've already made up their mind. You're probably not the guy or gal for them. And so making sure they feel engagement, having models on the table, they can handle, they can hold, they can compare, that's really, really important. And so I'd like you to consider this as you build the philosophy or the structure of your consult. Think about the education, the explanation, the experience, and the engagement. I think as you do that, you'll be able to handcraft the way you want to influence each of these. But for this has been powerful. This has kind of been the thought that I've approached consults with, and it's going to be different for everyone. If you ask my staff, the amount of education for this patient or this might be different based on how I'm reading them. The engagement level may be very, very different. The experience, completely different. If they've had a lot of bad experiences with the dentist, I might spend 50% of my time helping them understand they can trust me and we can work together as a team, as opposed to overwhelming them with details of treatment, treatment, treatment. You have to know exactly what the patient's after. I think that's important to really customize these 4 E's.
Now, one of the things that I love about your diagram, Riley, is it puts the patient in the center. I don't want any of you for 1 second to just think that was just got to put something in there. It's all about the patient. And if you don't get that, the patient will sense that. And I've had great joy and completeness with me personally, just serving these patients. So I'm glad you had that in the circle. That education's all about the patient, not your knowledge base. Your explanation's not about you. It's about the patients and their potential needs. That experience, I would agree, 100% is everything. It's a feeling that they get that makes them want to put a second mortgage on their home and let you do their treatment. That's very humbling to me. I feel the pressure every time I do a big case, and I want, to deliver what I'm suggesting that I can deliver. That engagement, I guess, is really the process of that whole experience. Are they just listening there? Are they bored? Did you lose them a half an hour ago? That
Right.
engagement's really critical. And if you get really skilled at it, the second you've dropped them. You'll have to watch them carefully, look at their forehead, look at their eyes. It's a very sophisticated conversation you're having. It's not like you're going to just talk about a root canal that you've talked about 13,000 times this month and you just turn it on and it's just, kind of a recording of a dental script. This is somebody's life. You're going to make a difference. They're scared to death. It's going to cost them a lot of money. Be prepared. One of the biggest things that we struggle with as general dentists, we just show up and some assistant just shoves us in a room and we do our thing. You get out, you're blurry brains, you don't even know where you're at. They just grab you again and put you in another room. Say, do a root canal on number 12. And you get up, they tell you to do something else. This, you have to be prepared. And no one's going to put you in a room and just say, go do that. You've got to thoughtfully consider. And every time you do that, you have to say, why am I suggesting this? Would I do it on a loved one? Will it meet my goals?
Yeah. And maybe I'll just suggest something on this. All of that is like amazing. And I think to really hone this in, I wouldn't practice on your patients. I would practice with your team. There is an amazing thing where you take the time out of the day to literally, and sometimes we don't do this because we're maybe, concerned about feedback, or it just seems irregular in a dental office, but to sit the team across from you and let you do this, educate, take a sample case and run through it as if they're the patient and have them tell you, that was kind of awkward. That didn't come off. I know you're sincere, but it didn't come off sincere. Or that doesn't sound like you. Or that doesn't, do you know what I mean? And really get that feedback, because I've seen a lot of doctors get excited. They go to YCAP, they get educated, they're really stoked. And it takes them failed consults to learn. And I think that's really sad. I think your team can help you be comfortable and can give you the optics of a patient to help you, optimize your approach. So absolutely role play and plan and organize with your team.
So maybe all these doctors could come just join me on my boat. We could go fishing or go exploring and just practice their script. And I'd say, that sucks. Do it again.
I love it. All right, real quick, we're going to try to hustle through the next few slides, but PARQ, procedure, alternatives, risk, questions. This is a little medical, legal pearl for everyone. At the end of a consult especially, but any procedure, you should have PARQ'd with the patient. You reviewed the procedure, you talked about alternatives, you talked about the risks, and you talked and answered any questions. There will be different times when you're going to emphasize different things. I think when you're selling the treatment, you certainly need to talk about risks, but don't spend an hour out of an hour and 5 minutes talking about surgical risks. I think that is not an elegant dance. But just real quick, you need to make sure you hit PARQ, document that in your chart. That is something we try to put in our chart every procedure, every time, just helps protect you, and it's informing for the patients.
Also, it's a mind frame. If you could train your brain to think P, procedure, alternatives, risks, and questions, PARQ all day long. When you first meet a patient for a treatment plan, the risks or the procedure should be emphasized this big. Alternatives, that big. Risk, that big. Questions, that big. I'm talking metaphorically, of course, but what I want you to know is there's a time and a place to talk about risks. When you just are going to do the procedure, they've agreed to it, records have been taken, they've made a deposit for their work, then it's just a little review of procedure, not much on alternatives, they already get it. Emphasis on risks, because they're emotionally ready to do it. Don't scare them to death. Downplay it, it's not a big deal, and it isn't if you do it right. So anyway, Riley, I love PARQ. I think it can be incorporated in your implant consult, but it certainly goes in your daily record. It is good medicine, and it's done all over by good doctors.
Yeah, to that point, just again, from the feedback we've gotten is we've started using more computer, digital surgical guides and guided surgery. You naturally go through PARQ as you're educating with the procedure, because they're seeing and knowing what's going on step by step through, and I know we're going to get into some of this later, but I just thought it is a very natural flow. So as we go further into this, think of how it actually is natural,
Riley, just to bring us to front and center, you're saying PARQ should be on the front stage of your consult, that at the end of your consult, they should have thoroughly understood PARQ with its different emphasis.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Tom's going to take a couple of minutes here and go through some pre-consult conversations, and then we'll jump into the consult stuff. We're going to try to hustle through this so we don't keep you longer than an hour.
Okay. All right. So I just thought about, sharing some pearls and things that have been helpful for us. So, if you're a general office and you're really busy, you have a very busy front office and you have a very busy back office, and everybody's just super busy. And what I've realized is for implant procedures, they're so different. They're different than any other patient calling in and what they need. And so the question I want you to ask yourself is, do you have a clearly spelled out and documented process that helps you qualify implant leads and helps you understand who they are, and I'll get into some other things. Have they been to a consult before? Do they really know what they want? If they're an existing patient, going down the decision tree of, okay, was this previously treatment planned or whatnot, but understanding how to deal with their call. And then the other question is my entire front office team qualified to handle the implant inquiry? Let's say they don't know you, they don't have a relationship. A lot of implant patients are doing procedure-based marketing, meaning there's so much marketing going on. It's so commercialized. They will call your office and they will test you on the phone. Your front office team, whoever's answering the phone, will greatly determine whether you're ever going to have a consult with that patient based on how they behave. How, do we tell them what our fee is? That's a big one. People wonder that. Do I tell them what our fee is? Because patients call and go, hey, how much do implants cost? And then some of our team members want to be like, well, our fee schedule, and they're like, okay, and they call the next, and they never get in for a consult. And so be thinking about your team. We can go to this. How do we move to that next one? And look at this. So here's some things to help you backfill that question. So if you're not using call recording on the front line of your practice, you really should consider it. And this is not a babysitting technique. This is a quality assurance technique. Especially with COVID and everything going on, you've got to be on your game. And you know what? The best time to train your team is right now. A lot of us are doing emergency only. We have the team available to us, and you can be practicing this stuff, but call recording and reviewing, and you can only do this if it's a safe place to fail. So you've got to let your team know, hey, we're recording this for the benefit of all of us. We want you to hit your bonus. We want to be able to do the right thing for the patient. We want to educate. We don't ever want to misinform and go through that. And so that's a big deal. And then this consideration of adding the role of a dedicated implant patient coordinator to your team. I'm not suggesting you make another hire, but I am suggesting that in some cases there's a dominant doctor that does surgery and he has a surgical assistant that is with him. And there's a lot of conversation that happens there, but the front, there's a major gap. And either sometimes we don't plan all the phases of surgery. Sometimes there's, mistakes with insurance or whatnot. I'm saying the best team, implant surgical team, it would include a front office coordinator, a great surgical assistant, and the doctor, pulling them together and really making sure they have a great experience, because you don't just place implants and they're done, but everything else you do in your office is sometimes that way. So consider that. This is talking about qualifying the candidate. So this is talking about the phone call. So it's okay to ask whether or where they are on their implant journey, if they've had a previous consult, and then what are their expectations for your consult. So here's what happens in some of our offices. We'll do some aggressive marketing on dental implants. Patients will call in, and before we had a clear protocol to qualify, we would book consults. But then the experience of the doctor is they'd go into a consult and the patient had no money, no concept of really what implants were. They thought maybe this was a charity thing. It's just interesting how everybody has a different thing. Now when they're on the phone, we have them ask specific questions. And again, this is a calm, longer phone call where you're asking, hey, so, what brought you to our phone today? And let them talk. Have you had another consult with another practice? Let them talk. What are your expectations? What are you trying to achieve? And you can create a little short form on this. So if it's an implant patient, just grab that form and they're filling it out and taking those notes of that phone call. And then this last part's the really most important part, I think, because it's kind of the cherry on top, is as you go through the qualifying, they realize that not everybody's getting into a consult. Right? They realize that without you telling them, because you're understanding who they are and what their needs are. And then you can let them know that, just so you know, when we book a consult, you have 100% of our doctor's time. And so for that 30-minute or 1 hour, you're with him. They're going to do a 3D scan for free, or whatever maybe you guys charge. We do free consults for us. And they're going to do this and spend time with you to understand. And at that point in time, they're going to give you a treatment plan. And so when people ask, well, what's the fee? We always say, we don't know any of that because everyone's so individual. And until you come through and we understand what's going on, then we can do that. So, I hope that wasn't too long.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Helping, build that process out. Don't treat an implant phone call like, anything else.
I think that's really helpful. I think a lot of these consults come in or they call in and our first impression's already been made with the office before the visit even happens. And it's a shame if we don't practice that craft like we do with the clinical consult. Okay, there's a lot going on here. Let me show you. This is essentially the workflow that we use for our consultations. When a patient comes in after paperwork has been filled out, it's typically emailed out before anyways, but they come in, the first thing they get is a tour of our facility. They're going to see where surgery happens, where our sterilization happens. They're going to see the office to help break down some barriers, help them just feel more comfortable. I'm curious. So if I ever go to a doctor, I'm just, wonder what's down there. Wonder what that is. Wonder what this is. But we give them a nice tour so there's no unknown. Try to set some people at ease. During that conversation, the assistants can ask questions, begin to build a profile of who this patient is a little bit more. A CT is taken immediately, large field of view. Even if they come in for a number 3 implant, they say, oh, number 3 needs an implant. I want at least an 8x8 CT. I can't tell you how many consults someone came in for upper right treatment and they end up getting lower left treatment also, because with the CT, you're able to diagnose things that you can't otherwise. And so I think that's really important. I'm not fishing for new treatment. I just want to be very thoughtful and thorough. And the radiation levels are so low today with these big fields of view. I don't think there's any reason not to take a large field of view. There's also reasons for that for guided surgery, but it's a big CT. Then we sit them down and do a clinical chairside exam. This is when the doctor comes in. We're going to talk more about that in a second. I just want to go through each step real quick. They're in an exam room. Doctor comes in. We do an exam. After that, we get up. We go to a consult room, which is a different room, non-clinical. There's a TV there. We review the CT with the patient. We do digital planning with the patient, talk about treatment options, answer questions, talk about economics. That's our workflow. I want to highlight these 4 areas. The first is the transition from clinical exam, chairside exam, to consult. That's a little awkward. From there, we'll talk about CT review. We'll talk about actual treatment options that are available and a little bit about economics.
You know, I find you can't be a good treatment planner. You can't have success in the consultation unless you know what your dental philosophy is. Mine boils down to 4 things, and this happened over a long time. I've been using this for 31 years. I want my treatment plan to last a long time. There's lots of implications of things here. Number 2, I want it to look great as if it grew there. 3, I want it to optimize functionality, which is our role and our goal as implant dentists. And I want it to be comfortable during the procedure and afterwards. So I use that to introduce myself to the new patient. This is my goal. This is what I'm all about. Then I do my clinical acquisition of diagnostic data. Now I'm in the consult room, whether it's all in one appointment or staggered over 1 week. Now this is how I transition. Just like we've got chairside exam to the consult room, I say, before we start, I'd like to just draw out, and I'm sitting at a table with a glass on top. I use my marker, and I just write these out by hand. I said, this is my goal. This has been my life work to do this. So, and then I move on. So I think it's been a wonderful transition. I hope it helps you, because it is awkward. You just jump in and say, okay, let's go. It's a wonderful way for them to know you're driven by governing values, and these values are important to them as a consumer, and those 4 to me have tested the test of time, and I gladly let you have them and abundantly share them with you.
Well, and I think, that sets you apart. Let's say these people have been fishing around already. They've gone to some different consults. Within the first 5 minutes of you, the doctor, sitting down, they're like, wow, this is different. My other doctor spent 5 minutes total with me, and you just shared your philosophy where I really know who you are. You've opened up to me. I'm going to open up to you. This is a process, and maybe people laugh about the psychology of the consult, but I really think you have to be very thoughtful how you engage another human and try to sell them something that is sometimes tens and tens of thousands of dollars, that involves a surgical procedure that, by the way, does not have guaranteed results. There are a lot of variables here, and you need to approach it in a way that is very humane, very real, very raw, very just not too polished, but not unorganized. But you have to let them know that you're very real, you care about them. And I think this epitomizes that principle.
And you know, Riley, I think a lot of practice management guys out there tell you to script this and script that. I think they should script themselves out of your life. You know, they don't. I think, you know, I had a case come in, and I just got there a couple minutes late. I threw on my white clinical jacket. I'm wearing tennis shoes and Levi's. I did the consult. we're walking. He accepted a $47,000 treatment plan. He says, you know why I accepted your treatment today, PK? And I said, I don't know. I assume that you trust me. He said, yeah, but you were the opposite of smoke and mirrors. Look at you. You're wearing tennis shoes and Levi's. And, well, he said, you're certainly not trying to impress me. I said, doesn't that impress you? He says, well, it impresses me that you're comfortable in whatever you're wearing. I said, you, and I took his check and we scheduled him.
You know what? This is so funny because I think authenticity builds connection and builds trust. Like if you can, I don't even care what words anybody ever says, like even if they're stumbling over or they seem nervous, when I can truly tell that they're being themselves, and they're really talking for themselves and they're unapologetically themselves, I thrive off that. In fact, I want to like invest into that person. I get to the point where I'm like, I love that, you know? And I hear this all the time. When we went up to Riley's practice in Oregon, I asked one of the patients why they accepted treatment and wanted to do this. You know, I was kind of just interested. And she said, I just trust him. I trust him. He won't do me any harm. I just trust him. And you think about that. And Dad, you've heard that your entire life. And you know, again, this goes back to the first thing. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And everyone needs to have their dental philosophy. And I honestly, I think it's critical. And even for me as someone who manages and owns practices, I have to have an approach that meshes with the doctors we partner with. Everybody has to have this in their own arena. And I think it's awesome. I think it's great.
And Tom, if you did not have that philosophy and shared it, you would be out of the family, because then you're just another.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, for us, we had to have it or we didn't eat.
Yeah, so it's like, what's your philosophy for dinner? All right, now you can eat.
I'm like, I want my dinner to last a long time. I want it to look great.
I want it to taste good.
Better be comfortable and during and after.
And I want leftovers.
And it better be leftovers.
I never even thought about it. That has universal application.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It could be a mantra for marriage. Make sure it lasts a long time. Make sure you marry someone that looks great, as if they grew there.
Okay.
I don't know that. All right. I don't know that. I love it. Well,
okay.
Next slide.
Next slide, please.
Swing the slide. I'm sitting on my boat. I'm frivolous. My height of frivolity is out of control. I can't control myself.
All right. We're going to talk now a couple of pearls about this concept of reviewing the CT. I'm a big fan of this. I'm big on technology. I will pull up screenshots just like this. I will place a digital implant right in front of the patient. I will measure bone volume right in front of the patient, and I will let them see it. And what I find are two huge pearls. Number one, I as a clinician do not treatment plan something that is impossible. If you are not doing some of this diagnostic workup, a little bit of research beforehand, you might do what I have done, where you just look in the mouth and say, oh yeah, the bone looks good. And then you treatment plan an implant, and then the day of surgery, you take a CT, or better yet, you never took a CT, you reflect a flap and you're like, oh wow, the tissue is 6 millimeters thick on the palate and there is no palatal bone. And then you got to figure it out. And what does figuring it out mean? It means you lost money and you lost time on the case. And so the big pearl with the CT review is, number one, you're going to know what you're doing is actually possible. That's a novel thought. For me, it was to figure that out. Here's perhaps even a more important or equally important concept. I no longer become the bad guy in terms of selling treatment or breaking the news that bone quality is low or bone volume is low. So if I show a patient this here, and this is the same case, I place the implant on the DICOM on the left, and I tell the patient, this is beautifully placed where the bone is. But look on the right. Do you want a tooth sticking out where that green cylinder is? I don't. I think the tooth should be back where the other teeth belong. And
you know, the only reason you'd want a tooth sticking out that way is if you were like a horse and you wanted to eat an apple through a picket fence or a chain.
True. That's right. And I give them that treatment option. If they want that, we can do the horse apple picket fence technique, which is a very sophisticated.
The picket fence was wrong. Chain link, but yeah.
Okay, chain link. All right, great. But the point is, the CT helps me build trust with the patient that what I'm telling them is real. I think the analogy is, it's like the intraoral camera for crowns and operative dentistry. The patient comes in, hey, you got an amalgam fracture on the distal marginal ridge, you need a crown. The patient's thinking, okay, doc, do you need a new boat or what's going on?
Yeah.
You get the camera in there, you take a picture this big of a little fracture, they say, you're right, we have a problem. I can show the problems in my CT with the STL overlay that helps the patient understand and appreciate the necessity for additional procedures, which in turn helps them pay for it.
And let me say something here too. Patients want unbiased information. They get a lot of marketing, they get a lot of, all this stuff. But when you have data that is data collected through image capture and you're both looking at it, it's no different than when you do a performance review with an employee and you're looking at data, right? Let's say you have an associate doctor, you're looking at procedures they're doing and production, and it's not an emotional thing. It's not like, hey, I think you need to work harder or I think you need to. Data is so good. So and I'll tell you this too, this is, we just bought, what we signed, like 6 3D imaging machines. So we've got 5 or 4 practices in Texas and one in Oklahoma that they did not have 3D units. And this is hard. It's hard to do a consult without data and information like this. So we just acquired that technology, and I'm like so excited for it to get there and get set up, because it's going to change everything. It's not going to be like a believe me game. It's going to be like, this is what's going on and let's work through it, So
Tom and his practices are one of our new partners with DO. We're getting them all outfitted to DO, and they took advantage of some of our promotions to get extra technology in their office, which is really cool. But that's my next point with this, is you can go through here and you can also tell your patients, which is very important, and it's something I say during every consult, that listen, we are going to take these digital files and we are going to do a virtual simulated surgery. And through that simulated surgery, we are going to optimize surgical protocol and implant position to optimize the final outcome. We call that guided or computer guided surgery today. And that is a technique we use in our office. That right there sets me apart. A lot of you might be doing that, but you're not telling the patient.
right.
You have to sell that to the patient, because it's very, very important they understand that you are doing this a more sophisticated, a more comprehensive, a more contemporary way that allows more accuracy, less complications, faster surgery time. Is there a little additional cost? Yes, but the patients are happy to pay for that when they understand the benefits and the methodology behind it.
Here's the problem, Riley. A lot of us would go into a treatment plan with, typical PA and a pano or something, and then we would go ahead and try to talk about the implant procedure that we perceive to be needed, but then get into surgery and no, there's no bone.
Yeah.
Or then send the patient to the orthodontist down the hall to get a CBCT. It comes back, you don't know how to read it. You're still, and I'm being a little facetious, but not really. So it's really important. This equipment, you can get a cone beam and an STL converter for less than $50,000 today. Zero interest. It's a no-brainer. You guys, when you're ready, I would highly consider it. So now you've done this in front of them. Where are you going after this, Riley?
Well, from this brings up a lot of questions. It highlights a lot of clinical pearls and just answers a lot of things. Here's just another quick example. So I'm going to overlay the STL right in front of the patient in my software here. I'm going to drop teeth in, and I'm going to plan implants according to the teeth and just help them appreciate all of the variables. This is part of education. They are understanding, wow, there's a lot involved here. You have the bone, you have to worry about the teeth, nerves, sinus, roots, all of that they're going to see. I think that's really important that you highlight this. So this is really important, that we paint a picture of what their anatomy looks like, what their situation is. After I know that, and I've reviewed it with the patient, we can start treatment planning with them and start talking about options. So that review of the CT is a little bit of a show and a dance for the patient, but it also, that's when I look at it for the first time typically. Now, if you're not comfortable looking at it live in front of the patient, you're gonna do that before you go into the room with them. But for me, often I walk in and that's the first time I'm looking at it. And I measure stuff right in front of them and let them know, hey, this looks good. This is going to be a little bit of a challenge, but that's for me. And now we're going to go talk options in just a second.
So, I mean, would you say that you're being a little bit more vulnerable. I mean, this is a skill I think that clinicians have to have. Is this is different, right? With everything else, you know how to do a crown, you understand the margins, you know, all this stuff, but to be vulnerable and say, hey, this is the first time. And I think it's good to say, hey, we just got this. Let's look at it together, measure, and have open, candid conversation. You know, I see this. And if it's something you don't know and understand, our doctors are really good to say, you know what, I'm going to talk to one of my mentors on this. This is a really interesting thing. And we can get back to you on that. I don't think there's any issues with not having the answer or feeling like it, because the other option is you're not authentic and you hide the data.
Exactly.
And then they know you're gaming it. And I don't like that. I think it's better to be very upfront.
And patients see it.
Totally.
Like, we think we're clever. We look just like our 6-year-old kids with chocolate all over their face saying, no, I didn't eat the chocolate.
I did. I have no idea where the chocolate
Yeah, I don't know where it went.
I don't like chocolate.
We are not that clever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have to be thoughtful with that and make sure that we understand that being real, I think, is key. I think it's really, really important that we have, you know, authentic answers and just give them the real story. I mean, that's 100% how I approach it. So
I think you build a lot of trust right there.
So we're going to jump into options economics. We're a little behind time, but I think the content here on is just as good as what we've had. We're really getting into some great little topics here. So here is some treatment options on an edentulous patient. So for my edentulous patients, I've tried to create a little bit of a menu like McDonald's, if you will. Make it easy for them. You can imagine the board up top. You look at the numbers. Which one I want a number 3. I want a number 5. And I've tried to break it up for my patients for removable options and fixed options. The upper number is how many implants go on the upper. The lower number is how many implants are on the lower. In the removable category, these are typically locators, equators, another attachment, ball attachments, hater bars, locator bars. That would all be considered removable. Fixed is cemented or screwed in, typically like a screw retained denture or a cement retained zirconia bridge, something like that. There's another category out there which is fixed movable, which is like your Zest, RF attachment, conus attachment, bar on bar attachments. I really challenge all of our doctors, you need to be very familiar with these options, understand why some might make better sense than others. Otherwise, you're going to get caught in a consult. They're going to ask a question that's thoughtful, and you're not going to be certain what the answer is. And I'm kind of and I appreciate the tough situation that doctors are in to understand all of this if you haven't done a lot of it. Where my real advantages in implant consults is I've done a lot of them. And so I can answer their questions from firsthand experience as opposed to, oh, that's the experience. Oh yeah, someone told me about that. That's why I know that. But I challenge you to get a script for these things, practice that with your staff. This treatment option, this slide right here, by the way, is a 2-day course that we teach. So I'm not gonna be able to hit it in a whole lot more detail than this, other than the point is I like to make it easy for my patients to understand. I have removable and I have fixed. Removable means you take them out, I can take them out. Fixed means I put them in, only I take them out. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. And I try to create these different options as a product line. Have you, any of you ever been doing, yeah, go Dad.
Back one stage, go back one. It's kind of funny. You talk to the patient, you give them kind of this scenario that you have these options. And then, you know, they come in initially and say, yeah, I want fixed teeth. And you say, you know, the difference between removable and fixed, that white line there, that's about 30,000. So which side of that line do you want me to talk about? You know, and they might say, I wanted fixed. And all of a sudden they're going, you know, that removable just sounds really good. And not embarrassing them. And it's kind of a nice way to go because you just want, you know, to meet their needs. It's not to sell them anything.
No, I think that's good.
So
Awesome.
Let me show you some of these products that I turn these into. I've named the different treatment options, different names. So for example, on the far right, a locator attachment, I call that the dual retention smile. Dual retention is what a locator attachment has, but I want them to have a name behind these because the name allows them to communicate with loved ones about the treatment in a way that is organized in their mind. I can just imagine my patients coming in they are edentulous or we have to edentulate them. And I gave them 4 options. And then they get in the car and they're driving home and they're all confused talking to each other, what's what. Now they can say, well, what about the dual retention smile? I liked this feature. What about the Titan smile? And then when they call the office, hey, yeah, we want to do the Titan smile. So there's no ambiguity what they're even talking about. We're all on the same page versus patients say something like this. Oh, I want the one with like the implants that have all the teeth on them. You're like, okay, yeah, that one. That's a great one. I don't know which one that is because that's all of them.
Not the one with teeth.
But it's funny how they don't organize it. I want to make it a product. I was going to share the story of like going to Insurance Lounge. If you go there and buy insurance, they have all these boxes on the wall and one has like a picture of a motorcycle, one has a boat, one has a house, and you pick up the box for the house and you check out. Because insurance is this fluffy thing that just comes in papers, right? But now I have a box, makes you feel like it's a product. I think there's power in that. These are some forms that I just made. I pay for a photo service where I can buy photos that don't, not taking any copyright impingement. And I just put a little description down, called it something. I have an R for removable and F for fixed. And these are things I use during consults, like a flip book to help them see what they're after. As a kid, I used to dream about owning a big truck and we'd go get the truck brochure and you would turn the page and it's okay, that's the 1500. Oh, I love that. Turn the page. Oh, that's the 2500, and you just have all these different options and you can dream about it. I tried to create something like that for the patient. I think something like this is important and I would challenge you to build one that makes sense for you. I'm happy to share these and I have with lots of doctors. I think you're cheating yourself of the exercise of giving it a description, highlighting the pros and the cons, and really owning it so you can naturally talk about it. You know how it is. If you stole someone else's work and you got to now describe it to someone else, I think you're going to look silly in front of a patient.
Riley, I think you should have just a standard denture. You've got that true smile, which is, your fixed case, which is the Taj Mahal, but you could have just a simple denture, no implants, and call it pseudo smile.
Without root.
Doesn't work smile.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Call it the bone resorption smile. It's good.
So that's kind of the thought there. Here's a little video of what we do during consults. This might be the most practical thing we show you, and I hope you like this. This is what we do in consults. We get a pano or a CT, a recreated pano. We get our iPad and the new iPad pen. I use an app called Notability. This is exactly what the icon looks like. I don't make any money off the app, but it's a great app, Notability. And then we take a picture of the pano in the Notability app. And then this is a screen share of my iPad actually writing down what I do during a consult. This is part of the engagement process. Look at what we do here. I'm going to play this video and you're going to see some drawing happen on the top right, well, the patient's top left, sinus. Here I'm outlining the sinus in yellow, helping them understand where the bone is, and they can see the deficiency relative to the teeth next to it. I'm drawing where I want the floor of the sinus to be through a sinus augmentation, and then I'm going to draw a sinus on the other side. We have to do a sinus lift on both sides here. This is engagement. I'm growing the treatment plan in a way they actually understand, not a printout with 52 line items. They don't even know what the words mean. This is my treatment plan in a way that patients understand. I think
the reason we did this is pictures are worth thousands of words. There's thousands of words there, and they can talk to their spouse or anybody about it. You don't have to say it's number 3 or 4. It should be eventually in a plan of yours, but this has been something we've been doing for years and had great success.
Yeah. When we get to the end, we'll have you do that. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm just drawing here, highlighting the nerve. I'm saying that implant over on the lower right needs maybe a little bone graft by it. I just think the picture is really important. It helps the patient understand exactly what they're getting. Implant treatment also can take a long time. This case here, if you're doing sinus grafting and things, it's not unforeseeable. It could take 8, 9, 12 months even. And you can always refer back to the picture that is familiar to the patient. I will also scroll down. Notice I had multiple panos if I want to present different treatment plans. I can present different treatment plans, and then I'll just write in words kind of what we're doing. Here's maybe how many implants we're doing. Here's what we're after. What I love about this document, I can email it to the patient in one click, so they have it on their car ride home. Makes us look really organized. Before they even started their car, I already emailed them notes from our consult. And then it also can go in the patient chart. If you're used to Whitecap, we used to write on the table a lot. I love that interaction, but the problem is there's no record of it unless you take pictures of it. Here, I write everything on the iPad. Everything we talked about and wrote down is gonna stay in their digital chart. Here I'm outlining the steps. What I'm drawing right now is literally what my consults look like. Like if you show me a consult, I'll go up and see the picture of the pano, and then I'll see the sequence down below and understand exactly, oh yeah, I told you it's gonna be 6 to 8 months. Because the patients always say, you told me it will be done in 3 months. See all the numbers written down? The patient only remembers the lowest number and they think that was for the whole treatment. I'll be like, no, remember? Because it's been 4 months and they're all feisty, they want their teeth. So I make sure there's no HIPAA violation here. I just put first name, last initial, because Notability is not HIPAA compliant to my knowledge. That would be my only word of caution to you, is make sure you're not violating HIPAA. We don't do that in our office. There's just a date, first name, last name, and then that's it. I think that's a clever little technique you might consider of how you document it. I'm gonna go back to the picture here. I love showing the patient a picture like this of what the treatment is. That to me just makes more sense than the 4-page printout with the dollar amount on the bottom. I see patients all the time come into my office with your printouts, kind of teasing you other doctors, that show me like, and they always say, I don't know what this is, but here's what they wanted to do for me.
Yeah.
They have no idea what it is.
And let me say something to this too. There's nothing worse than automated chart notes, automated, templated, here's your treatment plan. It's so impersonal. It's unbelievable. And it looks like someone, and really it's what happens. Somebody input it into the computer and then it spits out, and it built this big thing. And I also think when you're doing this, you're architecting and building a smile. And I think having conversation around, we're looking at doing a bunch of landscaping and seeing mock-ups and do I agree with that? Does that look good? This is interesting. And understanding their process makes me respect their bid. Yeah. And it's the same thing with this. When they recognize what you have to do, the time, the attention, the focus, the technology, science, et cetera, they're gonna appreciate it.
All right, we're just about out of time. Let me highlight just 1 or 2 other things here. I'm gonna skip to another slide here. Let's just talk economics real quick. And I wanna talk about this concept of a bundling fee. Now, let me start by saying this. If you're networked with insurance or contracted rather with insurance, you need to be careful with this concept. You need to talk to an insurance expert, consultant, and make sure you're not violating anything with your insurance contracts. But I do think if you're at a certain dollar amount or volume of implant dentistry, maybe 3 or 4 implants plus, I think you should consider a bundle fee. So really quick, there's a lot of numbers here. Here is an equation that PK came up with a long time ago that we use. And essentially, if you don't know what your bundle fee should be, I would challenge you to maybe look at this. It is taking your hard cost of the implant case. So I'm not talking about your rent. I'm not talking about your liability insurance. I'm talking about the hard cost of the case, your implants, your abutments, your bone graft material, whatever you're going to use in the case. And that is what your hard cost is going to be. Now, you're going to add that to the sum of your doctor hour that you're going to invest into the case and your hourly production goal. So let's talk about like a 4-4 bar, 4 implants on top, 4 on bottom, bars with locators on top. So I call that the 4-4B. If I look at my hard cost and I'm buying implants at the store, 8 implants at $175, 2 bars from the Whitecap lab, $650 a piece, 8 locators that are going to go on the bar, final dentures with the metal framework, premium denture, your surgical guides, and your healing abutments. And I just added a $500 charge for miscellaneous. Your total hard cost is basically $4,200. If you look at doctor hours, I just guessed some time here. Your consult hour, pre-op, half an hour. Let's say your implant surgery is 3 hours. But let me tell you this, if you ordered guides, your implant surgery is not 3 hours. And I'm saying the case here, by the way, in this example is a real simple case. They're a dentulous, they already have temporary dentures. You just need to put implants in, wait for them to heal, and build the prosthetics. If they're already a dentulous and you've got guides and you're not doing a bunch of bone grafting, I would argue that surgery is probably closer to 45 minutes, especially if you're not doing any immediate load. You're just going to give them their temporary dentures. So realize there's a real big economic difference buying the guide, saving time. But I just threw in 3 hours to be overly generous with time, so I'm not juicing the numbers. Post-op, half an hour. I don't know what you're doing for a half hour, but you're in there somehow for a half hour. Uncovery, hour and a half. By the way, you're going to use your surgical guide to help you uncover because it shows you exactly where the implants are on an edentulous ridge. Impressions, jaw relations, 2 hours, try-in, delivery, check bite. You add all that up, 10 hours. So with these numbers, we can throw them into an equation. The only variable now is what is your hourly production goal? I just made up some numbers. You know, the ADA, I think, came out with the statement that you're somewhere around 400 is the average dentist. Let's say you wanted $1,000 an hour production and you knew you were going to be 10 hours into the case and your hard cost is $7,400. Your fee on that could be $17,000. Let's say your production goal is $1,500 and the same doctor hours, same hard cost. Maybe your fee's $22. So that's a little bit of a teaser to get you started, how to figure out maybe what a bundle fee could be. Here's the power of bundling. I'm going to argue that you with implant dentistry, big dentistry, especially if you're efficient with surgical guides, you can probably double produce what you're normally doing per hour on a bundle fee, which is less than your actual computer fee. So I would challenge you, go and find out what your fee would be in the computer for a 4-4 bar, run the numbers based on what you think they should be, and notice that difference. I love a win-win. You can discount your fee. That's a win for the patient. You can be more financially profitable for you. That's a win. I don't see a loser. I love it when no one's losing, everyone's winning. I tell my patients always this exact line. If you are doing lots of dentistry with me, I'm very efficient. And if I'm efficient, I want your dollar to be more efficient because we both are in this together. We're going to win together. I don't want to be the only beneficiary of efficiency. They should as well. And so I think that's a good concept. We have some spreadsheets, some calculators. If you want one of that, my email is always on the last slide. Shoot me an email. We can send you some of our calculators. They're just Excel sheets to help you crunch some of your numbers. Okay. Post-consult. Tom, Dad, any last thoughts on kind of follow-up or what you do with these consults after we're done with them, they leave? What's your recommendation?
You know, everybody's different. I would just say, be careful. Just when you do follow up with them, just do it as a follow-up and want to help them. Yeah, I never follow up. They just call and schedule. I don't know what that post-op consult's about. You guys got a problem or something? I don't know.
Well, we're not. I don't know. You're the man, So I think my advice is to schedule the follow-up. I think after we've done this whole consult experience, it's really sad, I think, to leave and have them say, you know what, I'm going to talk to my spouse. I'll get back to you. And then you say, thank you. That'd be great. Get back to us. No big deal. No pressure.
Tom, are you kind of saying I'm lame? Is that
I think, I'll tell you what, in a busy general office, it's a little different. I think when you're doing implant only and you can, but in a busy general office, you have to schedule the follow-up. And I think at the end of the consult, you can say, absolutely, you need time, talk to your spouse. You can endorse all of that and say, we see 100 patients a day and we're really, really busy. We would love to follow up with you when it's the right time for you. Can we call you on Wednesday at 8 o'clock?
Good point.
And she's going to be the one calling you and I'll tell you that's important because it puts a stake in the ground where if they got to talk to their bank to get financing, if they've got to figure out XYZ, it gives them the time, but then you have a scheduled follow-up. right? And if you have a sophisticated computer system, it actually will send them a text reminder if you put it into the schedule so that they know. And again, if you have an implant coordinator, they have their own column and they can follow up with these cases and figure out what's going on. And the follow-up is then not as awkward, because if you didn't set it, why are you following up? It seems like you're trying to collect money. But if you knew, so when you say, hey, we're going to follow up, and during that time, let's talk about finances and what you discover with your spouse and the questions and concerns you have. And, you know, now you've got an agenda item, and it's awesome. I would also say this, don't do that follow-up from the front. You have patients that walk in, if you've got a busy practice, it's really awkward to hear those conversations. And that's something that, you know, for us as we scale, that's a remote job, right? That they're following up. But if you can go into a side office, or even honestly, an office manager on their cell phone or whatever, just make sure your dedicated time, there's not a lot of noise and it's not affecting the other people, because it's just weird. But yeah.
I think that's the key as well. I think I like to follow up, but just real specific. I want to call them and just be, you know, or before they leave, just say, you know, what would you like us to do? I said, we aren't going to bug you. Like, it's a no pressure sell here. I think you should go. I always tell them, you should go home and think about it. Let me know what you want to do after you think about it some more. But we do want to follow up and make sure that all your questions are answered. And I do always leave my patients the option to come in again for a second consult, no fee again, no pressure, because I'm passionate about the education. I say, if you get home and you get a little fuzzy what the different options are, come back. We'll do this whole thing over again, no cost. Happy to do it. You can call me. My follow-up tactic is follow up if they want me to and how they want me to, but I'm not gonna cold call them and just, hey, where you been? You ready to move forward? That's not my style. That's Clear Choice style. That's not how I operate. And
let me share something else too. You know, we live in COVID-19, you know, everyone's different, every state's different. There's a lot of teledentistry type options out there. There's one that we've been piloting in our offices called Doxy. It's free, and then you can scale it. I think it's doxy.com. It's worth checking out. We've done a lot of post-op, post-consult appointments via the HIPAA compliant Doxy platform. And it's been awesome because they're getting very used to using FaceTime or Zoom or whatever. But this is a HIPAA compliant scenario. And then I also want to say something that, like, for us, taking our implants to the next level, like making it repeatable and, like, you know, a process that can be followed across all the practices. Like DEO was critical for that, because when we you know, partnered and bought into our first 5 practices, we had Galileo's system. We had to mill surgical guides from Germany. This is insane. And we're like, this whole thing, it was like all over the place, and it was actually really expensive. And even though we were doing implants and our patients were paying for the surgical guide, and like, it just was not scalable, right? It was like, it took a very dynamic doctor. It took the right patient that had the money. It was a little bit like, we could never really scale this, you know? And I think now what's kind of fun is everything, it's not just guided surgery. That's not just the benefit. It's guided journey for the patient too. Like the ability to actually, they're seeing it. So everything's been enhanced. And I just keep thinking of, I don't know how many people are on here, but if you own a practice, you're trying to scale it, you're trying to get your associate to replace you, you're trying to buy more locations, grow, etc. How could you possibly do knowledge transfer if you don't have a dedicated digital system and pathway? That's impossible. You'd spend your whole life mentoring. You know what I mean? Like, sorry, Dad, that's kind of what you've done. But there's now a guided system in place.
And you know, one of the things too, in conclusion of this implant thing, that we just didn't have time to touch bases, and I horribly apologize. It was my delay. The internet's a little sketchy here, but I will tell you, the bigger the case, the longer the doctor or patient waits, the more consultations. So don't expect to close these the next day, the next week, but be patient. I hope this was helpful. There's a lot of different techniques. I guess I would highly encourage you to think about some of the things we've shared, especially the iPad and how that communicates. Riley, I think that's just amazing. And thanks, Tom and Riley, for that. And I hope you guys are safe. I think this thing's going to thaw out. We're all going to be back to work in a couple of weeks, is my best guess.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. Next week, we are doing a special webinar. It's a global webinar going across the world. And it's going to be about the UV activation of implant surface. What does that mean for you and your patients? It's going to be a different time, still Monday, but 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We hope that you can make it. It'll be PK and I, and we'll talk about the latest in implant surface treatment, specifically the UV activator from DO Implant System. It's pretty awesome. A couple of questions come in. Tom and I will answer them. One of them was uploading to the lab. Will they provide an STL overlay to patients? Yes. If you have an STL file or a normal impression, and if you get it to the lab, we will do an overlay, a virtual plan in about 24 to 48 hours. And then you can send that will get sent to you and you can show that to the patient.
Let's see, which CBT? So we use Action. So we bought it right through Whitecap. We've got 6 of them, and you know it's crazy to me that we bought a Galileo's. I mean, we spent like $175,000 on a stupid machine, and now we're spending 50 on them, and they're better. So I don't fall into these expensive CBCTs. I'm serious. And some of them are still hanging high because they've got audience, because we're tied to CIRAC, right? But we've broken that chain on those. So for whom should
contact? So my email's right there on the bottom. Someone asked, who do we contact to learn more? My email's right there on the bottom. I'm happy to help. We really pride ourselves at Whitecap as being a doctor helping a doctor out. And so if there are questions that we can help with, you just let me know. Happy to do that. And so we will, we'll be here to help anytime we can. That's my personal email. I check it all the time. Feel free to reach out and we can help. It looks like that's all of the questions that I see that came up. There's a few private messages coming through. I'll get to those. We really appreciate you guys listening. We hope you're well. I understand it's an awkward time out there in the world for everyone, but I think we're getting near the end of some of this true chaos. There'll be a little bit of chaos moving forward, but we hope you're well. We're here to help you thrive. That's our business at Whitecap. Anything implants, implant related, we've got you covered A to Z. Let us know what we can do to help. But looking forward to being on a webinar with you next week, 9 a.m. We will send out an invite. It'll be a little different because it's going through our global partner, but there will be a similar type thing where you register, log in, and then you can be there. So hope you guys are doing well. Appreciate you. And don't hesitate to shoot us an email. You guys take care.
All right. See you guys. Bye-bye.